Time for me to scare everybody to death now.
Go with the vision.
I'll get this going for you. Give everybody a minute to come on.
Good. Sir.
Good to be back this evening. And some people have written me and said, Brother Parnell, we thought you weren't going to have another session till the 11th. Well, we decided to come home a little early, so I was able to be back in time for tonight. We had a great time, a lot of good time alone. And Joe and I and Josiah were together for the week. We had a lot of good conversations, a lot of good discussions, and a lot of alone time. And Josiah got him a really nice buck, and I was glad for him. And Joe and I both let a lot walk by. We just didn't see anything we wanted. So we'll go back in January. There's another season in January. Try again, and if I don't see anything I don't want, I'm not worried about it. I just don't shoot at them. So, well, it's good to be here. And I had posted about a vision that I had had. Right away, different brothers, different ones, wrote me and said, Brother Parnell, this dream that you had, and I want to explain something. A dream is when you are asleep. It's called a night vision, and you are asleep when you have those. This was not a dream. This was wide awake, standing in a room, and everything opened up to me right before my eyes. And so it's a vision. And then another brother wrote and he said, well, I thought we were finished with prophets. Well, I guess we are finished with prophets, but what's that got to do with the vision? You know,
Right.
there are women that had vision in the scripture. They're not prophets. There were men that weren't prophets that had visions in the scripture. And so we are in an age where that it's a collective body. And I know that. That's why I wrote and put the vision out there. And so people could comment. And I got a lot of great comments about it. And it opened up more to me about the vision. So it was just a real good discussion on it. And I pretty much knew what it meant at the time, but then there were a lot of avenues that opened up as we were talking about it. But I returned from our hunting trip, enjoyed the time away, very much so, and I've been pondering this vision the whole time I was there. I had the vision on November 22nd, and I didn't say anything publicly. I had written, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different men, Alan and a few of them, and said, here's a vision I had, and we talked about it and things, but I decided that I wouldn't bring it out publicly until I was able to talk on it. And so I posted it last night, and it's one I had on November 22nd, 2020, and I believe it has a twofold meaning, or maybe even threefold. Spiritual happenings throughout the world and political happenings throughout the world. There are 3 realms that we are very interested in, and that's spiritual, political, and scientific. And so it's there, and I want to tell the vision and what I see opening in the woods, or opening in the worlds of spirituality and political, globally, some science, astrology. So you're going to hear a lot tonight. And I will go through it as quickly as I can, but it may be a little longer than normal. I was thinking about the ending of 2020 and bringing in the year of 2021, where we're at with that. We moved into many great things in the understanding of Aquarius. If you go back to before all of the riots and everything started, we started talking about Aquarius about then. And we moved into many great things in the understanding of Aquarius and its influences upon the world. If you remember, there were two very strong influences that I talked about back there at the very beginning. And those two influences were the planetary alignments of Uranus and Saturn. Saturn stays in Aquarius for a good while, and Uranus is away in Taurus. Uranus is the dominant planet for Aquarius, but it moves into Taurus, which is a very quiet, calm, and silent planetary or a silent house. And Saturn moves into Aquarius and really brings a lot of disruption and havoc and all kinds of things going on. So we moved into many great things in these understandings. The two strong influences are the planetary alignments of Uranus and Saturn. Uranus is in Taurus for some time. Saturn is in Aquarius, presenting its influences at the beginning of the age of Aquarius. There's three main emergences, if that's what you call it, three main comings together, three main alignments in Aquarius, and it's spirituality, science, and political. And we talked about science and how far we've gone in science in no time, and how that we have come out of our delusion of thinking science is a devil of some kind or a bunch of demons, and we've come to the understanding that science is us, and spirituality is us, and politics is us. Some of you don't want to think that. You don't want to think that politics is us, but it's us moving in the earth. We've got a lot of these never-Trumpers. Boy, you just hate that, to think that Donald Trump was you. Yeah, he was, and he is. And so is Biden. And so is all of this movement that's going on. It's all you. And for you to dislike some part of it, fuss over some part of it, or say it's not the Lord some part of you, you don't even understand your own belief that says we believe in oneness. It's all us. If you remember, there were two very strong, that's Uranus and Saturn. Then there's three main emergences in Aquarius, and that's in spirituality, science, and political arenas. As I said, USA and Israel and Rome will influence the political realm for the next millennia. I said it would go on for almost 1,000 years, and it will. You watch. If you could live 1,000 years, you'd be saying, wow, that guy was pretty sharp back there. Well, it just so happens we don't live that long here, so you'll probably be on the other side saying, geez, you got that right. Mm-hmm. But anyway, these three will influence United States and Israel, their natures, their characters, their political scene. Everything will influence the earth and the world. And Rome, the Vatican, whatever you want to call it, it's lost its influence religiously. It's lost its influence nationally. It's lost its influence as a church. It's lost all that. But there's one thing it holds, and that is the financial paramount of the world. It holds the financial goods, all of the gold, much of the silver, and they're going to be the backing of all this movement. And we've talked about that. Rome, United States, Israel, and Rome will influence the political realm for the next millennia. You can see the turmoil taking place across the world, trying to delay this happening, trying to delay this spiritual movement, this scientific movement, climate change, all of these things, and trying to politically stop this movement from happening. It's going on all around us. And it is all the Spirit. And I'm going to go into something here, and it's probably going to throw a twist into a whole lot of your minds. But this is what I see happening. The Great Spirit, the great fountain spirit, the pillar of fire, the Spirit in us, the Great Spirit, is dealing with its inner emotional nature right now. Yes, the Spirit has to learn. It put these things together. We put these things together to learn from it, and to adjust emotionally to what humanity laid inside the Spirit. And then the decision to manifest it and bring it out, now we have to adjust emotionally. The Great Spirit is adjusting emotionally right now, within its inner emotional nature right now. Its evolution is important to all of creation. The Spirit is evolving. The Spirit is changing. And it's learning from all of the things that it has put together in humanity. In Noah's day, the emotional anger of the Spirit cursed the earth. You can read it. Go back and read it. Cursed the earth, destroyed the seed, and started it all over again. 8 people walked out of that ark. He literally, the Spirit became so angry with what was going on and all of the things that were happening with his attribute of humanity that he wiped it out. You say, Brother Parnell, that's not the Lord. Well, who else did it? Is there anybody else out there that did it? We know better. He destroyed the seed, cursed the earth, wiped it clean. Then realizing, read your own scripture, then realizing that it wasn't the way to deal with his gaining of understanding and experience, he repented. Go read your Bible. Moses had enough sense to know that the Lord, the Spirit, felt emotionally bad about what he had done to the world. Because he's a learning nature just like you and me. Realizing that it wasn't the way to deal with his gaining of understanding and experience, he swore that he would never do that again, and lifted the curse on the earth and changed his emotional attitude of his own humanitarian attribute. He changed his thinking. He changed the way, because this human attribute is him. It is the Spirit. It is us. He changed his emotional attitude of his humanitarian attribute, and he placed a bow in the sky, a rainbow, a bow, as a covenant to quell his anger. And Moses wrote about that and said it was put there as a covenant in the sky for all of the earth and the world and humanity to realize that he will not destroy humanity again. He won't do that. He then made a way, after they got out of the ark, he displayed his bow in the sky. He then made a way for all of humanity, by creating and indwelling himself in a body. In his fullness, in a body of sonship called Jesus Christ, and took all of the sin and iniquity of his own self. That was in him, that iniquity and that emotion and that anger. He took all of that and he put it on that one human body. Took all of the iniquity of the human race, took all of the anger that he felt, took all of his feelings, took everything and judged it in that one body called Jesus Christ, and destroyed it right there on Calvary. And it became our sin that we might become its righteousness. It was a unique way for the Spirit, or us, to deal with our own inadequacies. That's what it was. We had our own hurt feelings because we couldn't get the collective body to do what we desired to do. And therefore, we destroyed the world, and then we brought in a line of genetics to bring it right down to one body, indwelling the in fullness of the Godhead bodily, and destroyed it, and for once and all finished the sin question on Calvary. It was a unique way for us, the Spirit, to deal with its own inadequacies. I just can't believe you're saying that about the Holy Spirit, Brother Parnell. It's just us. That's what he is. It's just us. After 2,000 years, he put it all on that man. And after 2,000 years of an emotional roller coaster ride down through the church ages, with spilling of blood, with slaughtering, with everything else, a ride through the church age, once again the Spirit had feelings of total destruction. It wanted to destroy everything. Blindness came on everybody. The Spirit had feelings of total destruction and sent a prophet to declare that judgment upon the earth, ending the ages in gross darkness and prophesying that you're going to a nuclear destruction. I'm going to destroy you, all of you, and I'm going to wipe the face of the earth off again. That was the message given to us. You all know it was. But just like Jonah gave his message, the Spirit began to think about the covenant that he made, and the Spirit reminded himself that we are but flesh. And in all its understanding, lifted his anger and brought out another rainbow, Revelations 10:1, and hung the rainbow in the sky and said, I will not take them into total gross darkness, destroy them with nuclear destruction, and do all the things that I did before. I will not do it. I promised I wouldn't. And he hung another rainbow into the sky, reminding us of who we are, reminding us of our promises and our own actions, and brought another rainbow in the sky, Revelations 10:1, Sunset Mountain. And it was the days of Noah remembered again, and a covenant with humanity and the earth, saying, we won't do this. So we see this happening, and that just happened recently for us. Brother Mitta Edwardson and I were talking, and he wrote this. He said, I've been thinking about God, the Spirit, in the Bible, and how he evolved through the ages, observing the frustration and anger as a father with his family. This is another way of looking at it. Feeling all his frustration. A young parent with disobedient children, and his response at the different stages from immaturity going forward. I saw how Genesis 8 is a decree of never to have the violent rage upon his family the way he did them, in spite of their evil. All of our families have got evil in our own eyes, sons, daughters, and everyone else, and we wrestle with it all the time. Well, this father, this young parent, had a young humanity growing. This father, in Genesis 8, swore he wouldn't bring that kind of discipline upon his family again. Plus, the rainbow is to signify the change in the promise never to curse the earth again. His frustration is evident through the church ages, and he pulls out another rainbow in Revelations 10, lest he smite the earth with a curse. He's mindful of the unconditional covenant of Genesis 8:21. I'm saying this for a reason. I'm bringing this in before the vision. Malachi 4, the ministry was an expression of God's unrest, of the Spirit's unrest, with the evil he witnessed through the ages. Revelation 10 ministry is a coming of age in way of working through the trial, the judgments, the punishments, and he, as the Father, is still thinking or processing the ordeal of being mistreated by his own family through the ages. Now that we are above the mind age, here there's no more moving parts. Let us make man in our image. We, us, spiritually, humanity, as a collective body, are the reflection of this development going on now. We are creating man into the image we wanted him without taking him through the literal, complete, total destruction. It's going on all around us now. We are no longer wrestling with trials and judgments, punishments, or directives. Our directive is more towards acceptance of diversity, inclusion, tolerance, and beyond tolerance into perfect love. Such love covers the multitudes. Thinking above these things, this is me, Brother Mitten made those statements, almost identical to what I saw. Thinking about these things and the Spirit, and it's evolving, and it's moving forward, and it's growing in its maturity, thinking about these things about the Spirit and its evidence of love for humanity, I want to look at the vision and talk to you about what is happening, about the Spirit, the collective body of us, what we are doing and bringing into view of our evolution and our understanding. This vision is all about our evolution and our understanding. So I'm going to read through the vision. Then I'll come back and we'll talk about it. So I will read completely through it. This was a vision on 11/22. I had an open vision and wanted to speak to everyone about what I saw. I don't know the meaning as I am pondering so much about it. Almost all of my visions are a symbolic form of something happening in the present time. After I came out of the vision, an inner voice spoke to me and said, "This vision will not linger. It is happening and will shortly be open before the eyes of those who will see." It is hunting season here in Ohio, and I was thinking about preparing for a hunting trip. I stepped into my office there, and suddenly I saw the vision right before my eyes. I was looking out the window, the side window, and there it was. And so I saw a majestic, amazing, large, whitetail buck deer. And I seen it in a great wooded area. And it walked out into an open court in a large forest. Like a place within the woods, an open field or courtyard. It was prancing so beautiful with its head up, and the two antlers were larger than I have ever seen in all of my life. Two animals came from the wooded area into the open courtyard and were chasing the deer. The animals were fierce, not large in size, but very aggressive. In the vision, it appeared to me to be like a wolverine and a badger. If you don't know what a wolverine or a badger is, that's North American animals. They're up in the Michigan, Wisconsin areas, up in there mostly. And they are small, about the size of a dog at biggest, the very biggest, maybe like a groundhog. So these two animals came from the wooded area into the open courtyard and were chasing the deer. The animals were fierce, not large in size, but very aggressive. In the vision, it appeared to be like a wolverine and a badger. They were obviously fighting the deer and were hurting the majestic animal. Then, out of the woods stepped another very aggressive animal, a Kodiak bear. If you understand Alaska and those places, the Kodiak bear is there. This Kodiak bear bent on destroying the deer. There was a fierce fight, and when the deer came out of the fight, its right antler was broken off, and its beauty was gone. It was obvious that the battle had diminished the deer's strength and its agility. It was a sad picture. As I watched, it appeared the deer would be taken down by the large bear. The bear had the broken antler in its mouth, and the deer was shaking its head, obviously in pain from what had happened. My heart, I was watching it, and my heart hurt due to what I had seen. I was standing there crying, watching it. Then I saw 3 people with long black robes, a woman and 2 men. They rose up from the ground in the courtyard. So they didn't come out of the woods, they rose up out of the ground in the courtyard. The woman stepped forward in the courtyard with great power, and she ripped the antler from the jaws of the bear. She was a fierce, powerful woman, full of character and compassion and stern in her ways. She called for the deer and had it to kneel before her, and she placed the second antler back on the deer. So she called for the deer knelt on its front legs, and she took the antler, had ripped it out of the bear's jaws, and put the antler back on the deer. She spoke something and removed her hand from the head of the deer, and it was healed. As I watched her, I thought of Esther in the courtyard of the king, standing for her people. The deer stood up in all of its original beauty, moving about the courtyard in a proud and respectful manner. The 2 men spoke. The 2 men in the black robes spoke and said, "This will not come without great turmoil." The spiritual woman with so much supreme authority spoke and said, "If that is what it takes, so let it be, so our children can rest." The vision left, and I've been pondering on what that means, and I wanted to give this to us to think about. So I put it out. Different ones talked about it. Different ones wandered. Different ones said some things. And there's some things that I wanted to just bring in off of this vision to help us all with. The first thing is, the vision will not linger. It is happening and will shortly be open before the eyes of those who will see. So it's going on around us right now. This vision is about present day happenings in our midst, globally, in the different realms, in all those different things. It is going on. Many parts of the vision, thinking about this, the vision will not linger. Many parts of the vision, I wrote this down, I quickly understood. And I knew what the Spirit was bringing us. And I could see it, and I knew what it meant. Other parts fell quickly into place, and I sent the vision to some of the brethren, and they sent back some of their own thoughts on it. And other parts became very clear from the writings and the comments from some of the brethren that I sent the vision out to. And then I posted the vision after I got back from the hunting trip, and I thought about it all week, and I pretty well understood it. And I posted the vision, and then what we have talked about is a collective body's vision of what is happening now. So different people begin to talk and feed in what they seen about the vision, and collectively, by looking at all that, it really opened up my mind a whole lot more. From the ones that I'd sent it to on Messenger and ones that said different things, to the ones that I sent it to on the Facebook as a post, and different ones commented about it, and I seen very clearly what was going on. So the vision is not lingering, and we're not going to sit here tonight and bring an interpretation to the vision. It'll interpret itself. It's happening all around us, and it's going to interpret itself. So the things that I'm going to talk about are the natures that are moving in the vision, the symbolics that I know from the vision. We're going to talk about those things and realize that collectively we have all brought this thing together, and we are seeing what it means and how it's going to play out. But I don't know about the time frames. I don't know how long. I don't know who's involved. I don't know any of those things. And I'm not going to sit here and try to call out some man or some woman. Different ones felt like, well, maybe the woman's Amy Coney Barrett. And others said, well, maybe the deer's Donald Trump. And others said, well, maybe it's this. And maybe, and I'm going to tell you, in a political realm, it looks that way. But we're going to talk about a whole lot more than a political realm tonight. This is a realm that I said is in three realms, and that is spirituality and science and politics. And it's moving all around us. A majestic, amazing, large, white-tailed buck deer. I wrote that down. It's something that stood out to me. A majestic, amazingly large, white-tailed buck deer walked out into an open court in a large forest. Now, first off, we know that a white-tailed deer is North American. It has to do with North America. And this white-tailed buck deer walked out into an open court, came out of a forest into an open court. A forest is people. So it is a nature that is raising up out of the people. That's what it is. And a sister helped me with this and helped me very much. A deer loses its antlers every season. I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but those nice big antlers, they don't stay on a deer. They lose them around January or February, March at the latest, and then they grow another set starting right around June or so. So a deer loses its antlers each season, symbolizing regeneration, rebirth, and fertility. That's what a deer symbolizes. Regeneration, regrows its glory, regrows and rebirths and brings fertility. The white-tailed deer is a symbol, whether you know it or not, the state of Pennsylvania. The white-tailed deer is its animal, its symbol. And where freedom was first signed by the 56 men in the Declaration of Independence was in the state of Pennsylvania. To me, it was showing that a great move of freedom, a great move that would carry us further in understanding, a great move into another age. This white-tailed buck deer is that spirit and nature of Aquarius, if you want to call it that, of this movement into rebirth, regeneration of the earth, all of these different things. It's a movement. The great Liberty Bell was rung in Pennsylvania to bring liberty for the United States at that time, but it's a symbol of what's going on, this white-tailed buck deer. And we're moving into these spiritual freedoms. We're moving into these spiritual freedoms spiritually. Spirituality is bringing us there, and science is bringing us there into recognizing what's going on throughout the world in science, and the political realm is right there in the middle of this white-tailed buck deer. Whether you know it or not, politically speaking, Pennsylvania, right there was the whole issues of the election and everything was Pennsylvania, the white-tailed buck deer. And so we see this politically, spiritually, scientifically, in every way. It's a moving of a nature to me that connotates and reveals regeneration, new birth, fertility, restoration, new heaven and new earth, new life. It brings all of those things forward. A deer does that. 56 men signed a Declaration of Independence in the land of the deer. The Liberty Bell was rung in the land of the white-tailed deer. It is a symbol of all of those things. And so we see it, and all of this freedom, all of these things that's happening, it's not coming without trouble in the early days. We see it happening all around us. The troubles coming into this spiritually, and all the things that are happening, and all the movement, and all the nature, and all the different things that are going on, and coming into it politically. Look at what's happening. So we see all this happening, and a sister, I think she's out of Sweden, she wrote me, Alicia Sudjwick is how I'm going to pronounce it. Forgive me, sister, if you're watching and I pronounce it wrong. The deer is an animal that is revered in many cultures. He is the king of the forest and the lord of nature. The antlers renewed every year mean that the deer was perceived as a symbol of fertility and rebirth, and the deer is compared in many astrologies and different writings. The deer is compared to the tree of life. And I really like that. When she wrote that, I thought, this is fitting the vision. This is really fitting the vision. So we have the white-tailed deer, or we have this movement, is what I'm going to call it, a movement out of the old systems, out of the Piscean age, into the Aquarian age, a movement out of those old laws and rules and rituals, a movement out of the old political systems, a movement out of the old scientific ways, and we're moving into, and it's happening all around us, and it's a great sign of fertility and things happening all about us to bring forth new life. The wolverine and the badger, I wrote this down. They meant something to me. I looked at them in the vision. The forest is the people. The deer is the great movement that is happening throughout the world, globally. The wolverine and the badger is the duality system that we can't seem to shake. Everything we do, every time the new movement tries to make a move in this courtyard, in the field, that daggone deer, that daggone badger, and that wolverine is right after us. We're always trying to drop back into the thinking of a duality. Duality this and duality that. There's two this, 20 that. And we're thinking about two of us, higher self and lower self. Constantly we're playing with duality, and that's that wolverine and that badger, that duality process that's trying to tear apart and rip apart the oneness, which is what the deer represents. It doesn't want us to be one. It doesn't want us to recognize there's only one spirit. It doesn't want us to recognize that there's only one spirit that's acting all of these things out. And it wants us to tear it all apart and have a devil and have a God and have a human and just rip it all out and keep us in a duality process. The duality system that we can't seem to shake. Small but fierce animals. North American animals. Representatives of these two animals, Michigan is wolverine and Wisconsin is a badger. Pennsylvania is a white-tailed deer. Now, I know political things just really upset people. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of it, but I'll just say to you this. Where is all the trouble happening? Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. It is a nature that's throwing out all of its symbols. It is a nature of Christ. And it's raising up all of these natures of himself, his souls of what he is and what he wants to be and how he's evolving. And the nature that this spirit, the Spirit of Christ, wants to be, I'm just going to tell you right now, that's the nature that will be healed, and that's the nature that will go on. But right now we see many natures. Michigan and Wisconsin, North American animals. Remember this. It's in the land of the North. Have you read your Bible? Everybody thinks I don't pay no attention to the Bible. Have you read your Bible about where the trouble was going to be in this day? The land of the North, Isaiah 14. In the land of the North, Lucifer would be lifted up. What is Lucifer? It is the processes, the rules of law, all of these different things. In the land of the North, Lucifer is lifted up. I know Wisconsin was where the first great movement, listen to me, Wisconsin was where the first great movement against racism came to be in the USA. Racism was rampant back a couple of hundred years ago. And in Wisconsin, the Ku Klux Klan and everything else was moving all across the United States. And they were pinning up Asians, and they wouldn't let them live except in camps and everything else. And that racism was just, they were hanging black people. Racism was everywhere. And in Wisconsin is where the first great movement against racism rose up. And this great movement against racism came to be in the USA when an organization was started to combat and expose the Ku Klux Klan. How many knows what that organization was? Does anybody here know what that organization was? Anybody out there know? You want to write it in? See, most people don't pay any attention to racism. I do. I love people. That great organization that rose up to expose the Klan and try to bring some equality into the United States was the Republican Party. For what it's worth, for all of you that hate them so bad. And this Wolverine and Badger was this duality process, and then Wisconsin represented a nature raising up against racism. And what do you see going on today throughout law enforcement, throughout the United States, and throughout the world? I mean, I'm watching Africa. I'm watching the British, the Great Britain. I'm watching Scotland and Ireland, and I'm watching Europe, and we ain't the only ones in an uproar. The world is in an uproar. And what's it over? The exposing of racism. This spirit, this cultural spirit, this apocalypse wants to expose all the racism to bring on a better quality of humanity. That's what's going on. This Wolverine and this Badger's Christ just as much as the deer is. And they are working on one another. The spirit is working out its inadequacies about how it feels emotionally about its own self. Just like you do. You work every day on how you feel about yourself. The spirit is doing that right now. This organization started to combat and expose the Klan and expose racism. Michigan was the first great battles that took place in the Midwest, where that they took the Midwestern lands from the Native American Indian. And now here is Michigan. I've said it for a long time. Some people have had it coming for a long time. Law enforcement has had it coming for a long time. And the way we have treated, this is representing a nature. The way we have treated the Native American, the way we have treated some races of people, it's now from those same areas a nature of Christ raising up to expose all of these things. This showing the great battle, the natures struggling, and the humanitarian nature, and the love that should be between us, and how we let politics and religion and everything else come between us where we couldn't be one. And now it's exposing every bit of it to where church doesn't mean anything, religion doesn't mean anything, politics don't mean anything, and nobody cares much about law enforcement. because those are the things that destroyed us. Don't get too upset. Out of the woods stepped another aggressive animal, a Kodiak bear. That stuck with me. We all know the bear of the North, communism. We heard about it all our lives. Communism, fascism, socialism has been a symbol to all of us of the great bear of the North. The Marxist, socialistic, communistic nature that is prevailing in the world and violently ravaging and taking over the world globally, and is using nations like China and Russia. Don't get too tore up about it. But that bear didn't raise up in China, not in this vision. That bear didn't raise up in Russia, not in this vision. That bear rose up here. The communistic, Marxist, socialistic nature that is prevailing in the world and violently ravishing and taking over the world is in organizations in the United States. And it's going on all around us, and it's the Spirit of Christ, because we need, listen to me, we need some socialistic things. We need to have a better humanity. We need some fascist things to have a better humanity. We need some communistic things to have a better humanity. And we do need some capitalistic things and a republic to have a better humanity. But what we are doing is this great Kodiak bear in an aggressive manner is raising up, and it's turning on and trying to destroy the movement. That's when we have to recognize these natures and realize which one, even though they're both Christ and they're both emotional and these feelings are coming out, we as the Spirit need to understand which one needs to prevail. And the one that needs to prevail is this great deer, this great movement that's moving us through all of these things. The strong left-wing Marxist of America is that bear at the moment, rising in nature of destruction, disrupting an already tough change. Coming into Aquarius has been very tough. A hard change, a disruptive change. And then this bear, this strong left-wing movement that is a destruction, is actually exposing a lot of corruption at the same time. That's what a lot of these natures raise up for, is to bring the apocalypse on that situation. The apocalypse isn't something that just happens at a certain time and that's it. The apocalypse has happened many times over and continues to move through the process. And right now we're watching the apocalypse on a lot of corrupt systems, and they're being exposed, both from the right wing, from the left wing, from the different natures throughout the world. We're watching it being exposed all around us, and it's the Spirit of Christ. However the Spirit of Christ brings it out, He is exposing it so He can emotionally prevail and change and get the right mix of what He wants, what we want in humanity. The strong left-wing Marxist America rise in the nature of the destruction, disrupting already tough change. It shows the struggling of natures in the Northlands, in the time wherein the processes are raised up to rule for a season. In all of their corruption, they are doing everything they can do to rule humanity. But all of these different natures are Christ in all of the ways that He, as a spirit, can use to expose and bring an apocalypse to all of these different things that are inadequacies and problems and iniquities in humanity. We're watching it go on all around us. The bear had the broken antler in his mouth. And the deer was shaking his head. I remember I was watching it, and I felt the tears running down my face because it was so sad. The deer was shaking his head, obviously in pain from what had happened. My heart hurt due to what was happening. The battle against our movement is what the deer is. The battle against our movement of regeneration, new heaven and new earth. And now it's a twofold unfolding in a spiritual and a political realm, and an unfolding. Remember, I told you there's two things that I wanted to. What do you think are these two things that are battling so hard? Uranus and Saturn. That's the two influences that are pouring all of this out. And Christ, the Spirit, is using those two influences to expose in everything the iniquities, the shameful things, the things that we should feel ashamed about and be better than what we are. And it's being exposed. Everything from, governments, republics, imperialistics, all across the world. Every kind of oligarchies, all of these different governments, they're all being exposed now for what they are. My heart hurt due to what was happening. The battle against our movement of regeneration, new heaven and new earth, here and now. It's happening. It's a twofold unfolding in the spiritual and political realms. And it's also an unfolding of Saturn with its influences and its law and order and its rules and regulations. Saturn battling Uranus and its freedom and its Aquarian nature and its wanting to move on into greater things in humanity. That's the tug of war we see going on all around us. And look at the political battle within North American continent. What's going on here is the dominant thing throughout the world. We all know that. Many people have written me from Africa, Europe, and everywhere saying, Brother Parnell, we're watching. We're watching closely because we know what happens there is going to affect us across the whole global world. And it's true. And look at the political battle within the North American continent. The battleground states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia. The symbols represent those states. In the vision, all of those symbols, all of those states were represented. I don't know what will happen there. I don't know. But I do know what we're watching unfold spiritually, this new movement, astrologically and scientifically, Saturn and Uranus, politically, all of these things that are happening in the United States right now. We're watching these things unfold. The symbols represent those exact things. I don't know what will happen there. I'm not going to pin it on one person. This one person's got to go in or else. I don't believe that. If this person goes in, oh, the Holy Spirit wants this one in, and that's just it. Well, you go on with your opinions and you believe that. For me, I am going to stay within the flow of the Holy Spirit, and whoever moves in there is exactly who the Spirit wanted in there. And I have said that all along. For those of you that have walked away from me because I am a supporter of Donald Trump, I believe that he is a good businessman, and he was a fulfillment of prophecies of William Branham and many other prophets, and he did what he was supposed to do, and I don't know what else he's got to do. And I'm not saying that it's all on him, and I'm not saying this vision is about him. But for those of you that can't stand him, you might be bucking against what the Spirit is doing. So we look at this. Symbols represent those things. I don't know what will happen there, but I do know we're watching an unfolding spirituality, science, and political realms all together. It's breaking all across the world. And what happens, you remember in the vision, the woman took the antler and she put it back on the deer. The deer knelt before her. She put the antler back on the deer and she said something. I tried to hear what she said to that. I wanted to know. And I couldn't make it out. I couldn't tell exactly what she said to that deer. And it kind of frustrated me. But I'll go on here. But it did remind me of another man who was having a vision. And he said, I've brought you right up to this day what's going on. And he said, I seen some unknown tongue or something flash. And he said, I tried to make out what it was, but I couldn't make it out. And he said, we'll have to wait and watch and see the interpretation of what that was. Well, what did this woman say, Brother Parnell? Because whatever she said had a lot of great authority in it, healed that deer and brought it back up and brought the movement back up. Whatever she said, I do not know. But I've brought you right up to this day, right up to where she has to make her move now. I have shown you that. I brought you right up to it. Now let's watch and let's see and let's pay attention, and you'll get the interpretation of what she said by what's going on out here around us. And when it comes, we'll talk about it. Brother Joe Gomez wrote, this sounds like a healing and a restoration after a great turmoil. As you said, the age of Aquarius starts ugly and messy. Beauty is restored after all this. It is not just about politics, but two influences taking place. Saturn and Uranus, like you mentioned, perhaps the two horns on the deer being a symbol of spirituality and regeneration, because one didn't get broken. Spirituality can't be broken. But then one was regenerated or brought back and placed on the deer. So there's a two-antlered situation in this movement into new heaven and new earth, this movement into Aquarius, and that is the movement of spirituality and regeneration. And the deer, another lady out of Sweden, while this one you can't make this up. A lady out of Sweden says the deer is rebirth, fertility, and regeneration. And a guy in the Philippines said this could be all about spirituality and regeneration. It's the Spirit of the Lord. This bringing it all together to understand. Saturn and Uranus, like you mentioned, perhaps the two horns of the deer, being a symbol of spirituality and regeneration. Two things I was thinking about in your vision. It is happening, and if that's what it takes, so let it be, so our children can rest. So a vision is taking place, and there's going to be some real turmoil, and so let it be in our generation, so our children can rest. This was Joe Gomez writing, and he said, Lynn Woods, I don't know if you've been following, I didn't write everything he said about it, but if you've been following everything, Lynn Woods, like in your vision, one of the lawyers in all of this political scene, Lynn Woods, like in your vision, talks about the children and says you and your children and grandchildren and their children deserve the very best that America has to offer, not this corruption. So what's going on? We have corruption
on both sides being exposed left and right. And we have corruption throughout the world being exposed in the governments in Africa, in Europe, in everywhere else. It's going on. We have the corruption of China. What's it about? It is a nature, many different styles and natures that are bringing about the exposing of all this corruption. And every one of those natures is Christ. Don't start thinking, oh, this is a bad person and this is a good person. This is a horrible organization and this is an excellent organization. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the Spirit raising up things in order to expose the inadequacies of humanity so we can make our humanitarian ways in Christ much better. So it's about the children. They deserve the very best. I wrote in. I said, yes. And it keeps coming back to the vision where William Branham talked about us being on a farm and his wife saying, Billy, we should have been here a long time ago for the children's sake. So we see the realms unfolding and then coming together spiritually and politically, because a great leader in the political side said we need to expose these things and set it up right so that our children can live in rest. A great prophet said we were living on a farm, and my wife said we should have been here a long time for the children's sake. And a vision comes to Brother Parnell, Brother Torrey, and says, the woman says, the two men say, this can't come without a lot of turmoil. And the woman says, then let it be so the children can have rest. It's all about these visions coming together. It's happening all around us right now. She was a fierce, powerful woman, full of character and compassion, stern in her ways. She called for the deer and had it to kneel before her. I put this in bold. And she placed the second antler back on the deer. She spoke something and removed her hand from the head of the deer, and it was healed. As I watched her, I thought of Esther in the courtyard of the king standing for his people, standing for her people. This reminds me of the prophet in the seventh seal. When he said he saw something flash by him, but he couldn't make out what he saw. He couldn't make out what it said. Then he said, I've brought you as far as I can in the interpretation. We will have to wait and see what transpires from here to get the interpretation of what those unknown tongues said. And let me tell you, I've brought you right up to tonight. I've brought you right up to where you see every spirit, you see everything as Christ, you see everything that's moving throughout the earth, you see how it's making its move in the earth and unfolding itself in so many different natures. You see the apocalypse taking place and raising up among the people. You see all of these things. I brought you as far as I can to show it to you. If you don't want to see it, there's nothing I can do about it. But I brought you to the door. Now we're going to have to wait and see what transpires to understand what the woman said to that deer. I have my thoughts, but I'm just like a prophet before. I ain't just going to throw my thoughts out. I want to understand it before I do that. Clement Ilunga wrote, this is about the vision. The majestic deer moving majestically represents our move towards a more humanitarian world. Exactly what I had seen and wrote down and gotten ready for today. All was moving so smoothly, and it was. Then the attack of the two animals of duality under the influence of Saturn have come to impose a sudden pause on everything. You remember me talking about Saturn brought a pause on the whole movement? These two animals brought a sudden pause in the majestic movement in both spirituality and politics, especially the current explosive status in the U.S. The us. I've noticed that before. The United States, the U.S., the explosive movement in the U.S., or I could say the explosive movement in us, parallels perfectly. Then comes the intervention of the mighty angelic mass movement under the influence of Uranus moving into Aquarius, and it's going to happen. And it will free the Aquarian movement in the land of promise, the farmland where children should have been all along. So he's connecting this vision exactly like I did to William Branham's vision of the farm. This vision connects together with George Washington's vision. Remember, I read to you and discussed George Washington's vision. You can go back and listen to it all. And William Branham's vision of the farm. And I will tell you another vision that it parallels almost perfectly is A.A. Allen's vision, which I read to you and brought out to you in our meetings. And it corresponds with the current situation in us. It's our story. As warned by a Tory, this Uranus influence for liberation will happen with many casualties, as has been always the pattern of the Great Spirit, and that's what we spoke in the vision. If that's what it will take, let it be for the children's sake. Once again, it's our story, and it's about the children. That really was a blessed vision. We thank the hunter to have brought it back to us, a powerful report. So he's seen pretty much exactly what I seen happening. That this thing is all about Christ coming in so many different natures to expose the inadequacies and the iniquities of humanity and build a better, more humane, loving system, removing racism, removing all these different governments and corruptions and exposing it all. A sister wrote, Razia Whispers. The deer represented the movement of the oneness among all the original tribes of the world. I like that. The movement of oneness among all the original tribes of the world, headed by the divine feminine, the woman. It's true. This woman will blow the trumpets of change in the four corners of the globe. It is us. They will represent the land. They have energies that are powerful enough to crush the matrix, the old system, the old ways, the old understanding, and to help awake the innocent souls that were not meant to be awakened in this timeline that we're in. The two men on the side are America and Israel, the two countries that will assist the world in this collective mass awakening. She's got a good understanding. The courtyard represents the tribal space of the world. The bear represents the matrix to be crushed. The other two animals represent the protectors of the matrix, the monarch and the Vatican. And it's true. They are the Spirit of Christ, but for centuries they were protectors of the matrix. And now there's another great movement, and that's this woman, us, raising up out of the courtyard. And as we raise up out of the courtyard, we are going to take this movement and we're going to keep it intact. and all these other spirits, which are all the spirits of Christ. It's us evolving and searching our hearts and talking to ourselves and deciding which pieces of these things we want to remain. And in the end, what we want to remain will remain. It's not hard to understand for me. They have energies and powers to crush the matrix, to do away with the Piscean old systems. The two-man American Israel, the two countries will assist in the world in this collective mass awakening. The courtyard represents the tribal space. The bear represents the matrix. The other two animals represent the protectors of the matrix, the monarchs, and the Vatican. The global financial system should not be the center of our focus, or Rome. And it's true. United States and Israel, I told you very plainly, are going to be two natures in the political scene that are going to influence the world for a millennia. Rome is the financier of all of it. Rome doesn't have any political clout at all. Rome doesn't have any political power or religious power anymore. Who cares what the Pope says? You know, it doesn't mean a thing anymore. But what does mean everything is where he takes his purse and puts it. And he will be led by the Spirit of Christ to put it in the right places. Yes, the Pope will be led by the Holy Spirit. The other two animals, okay, the global financial system we shouldn't worry about. All ground assets of the world should not be assigned to a third party, but to landowners. We're going to possess our own. We're going to come to our ownership. I tell you this, Fiji is the heart of this movement. I knew she was from Fiji when I was reading. I could tell it. And I agree with her. For her, Fiji is the heart of the whole movement. I wrote back, I said, you have a good grasp on the vision. Many of those things the Spirit has shown to me. I understand your thinking on Fiji, because for you, Fiji is where you are, and it is the center of the movement. I want to say that every person should feel that same way about where they are and where they're from. If you're in the Philippines, you should be feeling like the Philippines is the center of the movement. If you're in Canada, you should be feeling like Canada is the center of the movement. If wherever you're from, there's the area that you are going to bring into the fold, open to the awakening, and do all those things. And it's the center of the movement for you. So there's nothing wrong with what this lady said. There are many people and nations that are the heart, the center of this movement. And each is the center depending on the whereabouts that the person is speaking from. Absolutely true. So we're in this vision. It is happening all around us. We see the emblems. We see the political scene. We see the spiritual scene. We see the scientific astrological scene. And we see how it all of it is just a great big web that's connected together. And spirituality and science and astrology and religion and politics, it's all blending together right now. And all of it is the Spirit of Christ in his emotion, in his inner feelings, and he is going to take all of it in, which contains everything from socialism to fascism to communism to capitalism to spirituality to the movements that come down through spirituality, to all the great men that are living today with all the spiritual wonders that they are talking about, to all the great women and everyone who's connecting and in the spiritual move. It's all coming in, and the Spirit itself is containing it, feeling it, and the Spirit, us, is going to put out emotions. It's going to put out the feeling. It's going to put out its reasoning. And it's going to take its body, the earth, and it is going to set up exactly what it wants to set up out of all of this chaos that is going on in the middle of all this change. It's all him. It's all the Spirit. It's all us. So don't worry too much about who gets in the White House, who wins the Georgia Senate. Yes, it's a great thing happening politically, but it's all in the bosom of the Father. And he is rolling it all around, and he is feeling all the socialistic, communistic, fascism, capitalism. He's feeling all the racism. He's feeling everything. Don't you think that the Spirit doesn't know and feel these things? Like the Spirit doesn't recognize you. Like, don't feel that way. He feels it all. He is us. It's pouring in. He's holding it in his bosom. He's rolling it around in his thoughts and in his mind. And just as he evolved through Noah's day, just as he evolved through Jesus' day, just as he evolved through William Branham's day, he is evolving. The Spirit is evolving right now. There's a revolution going on inside his heart. And he is, the Spirit, us, is going to set things up much different than what they are. And it may take a generation of chaos. It may take a generation of death. It may take a generation of mixed feelings, of governments raising up that you hate, of men and women raising up that you can't stand. It may take a whole lot of things in order to do one thing, and that is to expose and bring out the iniquity and the inadequacies and the things in the human race that the Spirit doesn't want in there. And he will raise it all up. He'll bring it up like scum to the top of the milk jug. And then he'll swipe it away. And he'll move it away. And he'll set the system up the way he wants it. So don't you worry. Don't you worry about a thing. This vision is about the movement succeeding. This vision is about the new movement into Aquarius having a success and maturing itself and moving on. This woman that rose up in great supreme authority, you know who wears the black robes. It's the Supreme Court. And I'm not talking about the Supreme Court of America, but America is a symbol of the majesty. Who do you think came in 1963? And hung himself on Sunset Mountain? The supreme authority. And who do you think came in this vision and showed me who was going to straighten out things and who was going to set things up? The supreme authority. And he's going to do it through the woman. Through us, right here, living and walking and talking. He's setting it up inside us. And we're going to bring it about. Through one generation, 2 generations, 3, I don't know. But he's maturing, and he's exposing, and he's bringing about the healing of this great new movement. And it's happening all around us. Brother Parnell, I get this question 100 times a day. Do you think Donald Trump is going to get back in? I think Donald Trump has done everything that he was supposed to do. And if he gets back in, I'm sure the Spirit will have more things for him to do. If he doesn't get back in, the Spirit will have more things for him to do. If President Biden and Vice President Harris are in there, don't you think for a second that Donald Trump is going away. He represented a political side of this new movement. prophesied by prophets before him. I don't know what will happen to the man, and I'm not worried because I don't think this vision is about any one man. I think this vision is about I entered into the spirit and the nature of the Spirit and how he is wrestling with his own evolution, with his own evolving, with his, I felt it, I hurt, I watched it, I wanted things to happen, I cried, I entered into the bosom of the Father. And I felt what he's feeling right now. And it wasn't a great feeling. But he is the Almighty. And he is the Father. And that is us. And collectively moving in us, moving in his body, he will bring about his feelings and the things that he knows best that need to be set up in this earth. That's what I seen. That's what I understand. Oh, Brother Parnell, you always think you're the one moved into the bosom of the Father. Have you not got enough sense? Have you not gotten rid of your jealousy enough to realize that when I move in there, it's all of us? It's all of us. Jesus represented all of us. Adam represented all of us. William Branham represented all of us. What I did represents all of us. And it's coming now, and it's opening into the earth. At the same time that I had this vision, it was only a couple of days later that a precious brother, a man, came to my house, and he said, Brother Parnell, I had a dream, and it is concerning you. He said, I told my brother about the dream, and I asked him what it meant. And my brother said, I don't know. Maybe you should go to Brother Parnell. He can interpret dreams. So he came to me. He told me his dream, and then he commenced to telling me the interpretation. Well, who am I to give an interpretation if he thinks he already knows it? So I just sat back and listened. I could have given him the exact interpretation of that dream right at that time. But when you start telling me the Lord's already spoke to you, I don't have anything more to say. The Lord's already spoke to you. That's good enough for me. Go deal with what the Lord spoke to you. But I knew better. And I sat there and I let him tell his dream. I listened. Just very quickly, he saw me and Patty drive off into a huge dark lake in two different vehicles. And all the people had headlights on all around the lake looking for us. And crying, they wanted out, they wanted out, they wanted out. And he came down to the lake, reaching his arm and looking for us. And he said, I wasn't able to get you out. He said, I believe that the dream means that you are spiritually dead. I
Came
said,
over to your house and tell you that.
yeah. I thought, well, there's no sense me arguing with you. If you think I'm spiritually dead, then you're not going to believe anything I tell you. But I tell you what the dream was. Patty and I finally come to a point we are individuals. We were in two different vehicles. And we went into that lake on our own because that's exactly where we wanted to be, to go into the depths of the deep and into the darkness of the unknown. And we went in there as individuals so we could come out understanding the revelation of Jesus Christ that's hid in all of those things. And the people were sitting around with headlights on, crying they wanted out, they wanted out. He said they wanted out of the lake. They wasn't in the lake. They wanted out of those vehicles and those cars and those rules and regulations and all that garbage that we put one another in for years, and all they had was headlights to look. They didn't have no light of their own. I am spiritually dead to everything they believe. And no doubt they think I'm spiritually dead because they don't believe much that I believe. So I'm spiritually dead to that old system, and it didn't much bother me. In fact, I felt kind of good to know that they felt like I was spiritually dead, that I didn't believe anything they believed. I thought, yes. And I love him with all my heart. I listened to the dream. I knew the interpretation. I let him tell me what it meant in his own mind. And I ate my Thanksgiving dinner with him, and I let him go his way. But I will tell you this, not in arrogance, and not in bragging, not in pride, but in all the humbleness that I know how to say it. I will do more in 1 week for the collective body of Christ than that man will do in his entire lifetime. And he would call me spiritually dead. My. Where people go and the things that they say. This vision and that vision matched up perfectly for me. We've entered into that darkness. We've entered into that unknown. We've entered into that place where the woman said something, but we couldn't quite tell what it was, and we're ready to move on in that interpretation. We're ready to move on. We're ready to listen, to hear. We're ready for the antler to go back on. We're ready for the pause to be finished. We're ready to continue on and do what needs to be done and break open this movement and keep moving forward under this understanding that has been brought to us. What a great day. What a great understanding. This was not a dream. This was not my imagination. This was an open vision, standing there watching it take place. And then through you, much of what I seen, but also through you as a collective body, it pretty well all opened up to me, and I know exactly where we're standing, and I've brought you to the exact moment where the Spirit is at. Right up to the point of this woman speaking something that I just couldn't catch. And now we wait patiently to watch the interpretation of what she said. We know what the interpretation for William Branham's was. It came. It was the second ride. It was the great understanding, the moving out from the church ages. It was all those things. What this thing the woman spoke and healed the great white-tailed deer, which is the movement that we are in, new heaven, new earth, and all these things, the Aquarian age, what this woman spoke to give it all of its authority and place that antler back and move it on its way and get rid of the Piscean age and get rid of all these, what she spoke, we will naturally move right into it. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you the same thing William Branham said. Go home, enjoy yourself, believe with all your heart what you're in, know who we are, know where we're at, and watch the rest of it unfold. Is there anything anybody wants to say? Was there anything on there?
There's a couple of comments, but I think it'd be better if you read them later.
Okay. You want to sing a song? I've been watching just for the feel of it. Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali. I've been watching a lot of their old things, speeches and fights. Man, I'll tell you this, that Muhammad Ali was the greatest fighter I ever seen in my life. Jeez. He was so fast, he'd throw 15 punches before a person could blink. Why are you saying that, Brother Parnell? Just think about it. He was during the time of the great movement, the great change coming out of the SEALs. And he was a spiritual realm as well as Martin Luther King and many of them. You know why Muhammad Ali changed his name? Does anybody know why? Because Cassius Clay was a slave name given to different slaves down through time. And he said, I'm not a slave, I am free. And he changed his name because of that. There's a lot in what we're doing.
When I find myself in times of trouble, voices of love come to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, you are standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And when the night is cloudy, there is still a light that shines on me. Shine until tomorrow, let it be. The sound of music, songs of love come to me, singing words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be. Let it be, yes, let it be. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
In the authority that's been given us through Jesus Christ, claim the things that are yours. The things that are yours, your financials, your healing, your spirituality, your understanding. Claim all these things and trust that every single one of them will move into its proper place in your life. In the authority of Christ, we believe those things.